Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
Night Nation, we are here. This is episode number 50. I am Andrew Phegley, coming to you from the 1148 studios, and
I'm Trace Trylko. Hello, everyone.
It is episode number 50, Trace.
That is a milestone.
Oh, man, it's huge. It's huge.
However, I would like to go back in a time machine
Absolutely.
a week and be where we were on episode 49, when hope sprung eternal, where we were promoting overtime, where everything looked good. And
yeah,
then
but
the Thursday game came.
Don't be a downer just yet. We will get to that.
All
but
right.
I want to play a little montage here of our guests that we've had on our 50 shows.
This is J.J. Warden, Bill Schneider, Brendan Alexander, Brandon Howard, Cameron Stewart, Colin Bell, Jeff Sherrick, Kyle Israel, Quinton McDuffie, Quentin Hampton, Rashard Collins, Renell Hall,
Sire Burley,
Stephanie Bass, Terrence Plummer,
Tom James, Phil Steele, and you're listening to the UCF Knightline Podcast.
That is exciting stuff right there. That I went back and I made that little montage. It's not everybody because a couple people said their names so short or whatever, and I couldn't get it in there with my editing expertise, but that's still a lot of people, and that's awesome.
One of those people in that montage, former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel, joining us this week, every week, to break down the game. He'll be coming up in just a couple of moments. And as well, we have a Stanford insider from the Rivals page who's going to help us understand the Cardinal a little bit better.
Yeah, so back to the downturn of the UCF game the other night. I hate to ruin this 50th episode.
You didn't ruin it.
I know, but
They ruined it.
I hate to take it down a notch here, but yes, I'm not nearly as suicidal as I was for the UConn game last year, but I'm pissed off. It was a little crazy.
The implications of that UConn loss far different than this. But as I mentioned, going back in the time machine, where you want to feel good about the season and then to come out like that, to see the game sputter away at the FIU.
Yeah.
FIU.
Well, it's not a
Conference
team
USA.
It is not a team that we have not lost to before, though, and we've had...
And that game stunk, too, down in Miami.
It did. But we've had games that have gone both directions with that team. We've beat them twice that I know of in the last few years, and we've lost to them twice now.
Most disappointing home opener, first of all,
it is.
in quite some time.
Absolutely.
I mean, if ever.
We should have won that game. I said that it would be a little bit of a closer game. I said 21-10. For a long time, I thought it was going to be there. I really thought it was going to be there.
You were close on the score.
But I thought there was no way in my mind that we were going to lose that game.
I felt until the very end, even though I don't feel we played well, and I know I have a friend who gets upset when I say we, like I'm on the team, but that's how I feel.
Well,
okay?
we're a part of it.
And
We spend a lot of our time being a part of that.
I really felt like we were still going to win, and that this would just be, boy, we didn't play well here, this didn't quite work. I never thought that game was going to end in that way.
Yeah, it was bad. There were a lot of things that were bad about it. The final score was 15 FIU, 14 UCF.
I mean, you think about what we were worried about a week ago.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Who was going to catch the ball?
Right.
Two guys step up with 9 catches and 104 yards each.
Yeah, that's obviously not
Right?
a problem. We need a couple more people to be up in there as well. But we had offensive line problems, which we were talking about before.
Running game problems.
Running game problems that also concern the offensive line.
We were concerned about the secondary being tested,
Yeah.
and the defense just got gashed
A
for a
couple
lot
of
of
those
running
guys in the defense really stepped up too. There were definitely a couple guys. Shaquille Griffin was one of the big ones that I felt really stepped up there.
We thought that the defensive line would be one of the strengths. How much pressure did they get on FIU's quarterback?
Yeah, there were quite a few things. It is, I'm not making excuses because excuses should not be made. But they're young. First game, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, but this was what we thought might be a 3-1 September, right? Where Stanford, okay, that's going to be tough. Of course, Stanford goes out and loses to Northwestern Saturday, upset. Going to be out of the top 25 when a new poll comes out.
And that's dangerous.
Oh, goodness. That's what the Stanford guy's
We'll
going to tell
talk
us.
about that later,
Yeah, they're going to be a mad team, though I think UCF should be a frustrated and upset team as well.
Both teams in the next week's game are going to want to come out and prove something. Both teams. Stanford probably wants to do that a little bit more because they're at home.
Home opener for them.
But, we want to come out there and, show what we're made of, what we're really made of, not what the people that tuned into that game on CBS Sports Network, if there was any, from anywhere else. I'm sure there was. I don't know the ratings of it, whatever, but it's not like playing on Fox Sports 1 like we'll do next week against
Big primetime
Stanford.
showcase.
Yeah.
I've saw commercials for it all weekend mentioning the big game at Stanford. Do they, Stanford, take UCF lightly? UCF, at times, it felt like UCF took FIU lightly.
I believe that they probably did, and that's a big problem. I think it goes all the way from players all the way to coaches, to be honest with you, that maybe took this a little too lightly. And I don't think it's going to happen again, personally.
And how about those coaches?
Hopefully this was our one stumble, like we had the one stumble last year against UConn.
Yeah.
Maybe we got it over with early.
There's usually one.
Yeah. Maybe we got it over with early. It's not the way to start your season, though. It's not the way to go out there and, I thought at one point, is this what it's going to be like all year long? I hope not. I hope that we're not in the very beginning of a steep downturn.
Especially after
the
all
program.
the off-season talk of reloading and not rebuilding, that this wasn't going to be a big drop-off. New offensive coordinator, got to see some play call from him. New defensive coordinator.
And personally, an offensive coordinator that was also an offensive line coach before, and the offensive line has not gotten any better, it doesn't seem like, from last year.
From a protection standpoint, Justin Holman had time to throw the ball, but and I don't pin it all on them. You got to hit the hole, but the running game, 30 carries for 46 yards, you're not beating anybody, including FIU, doing that.
Was FIU's defense as good as they looked, or was our offense as bad as they looked?
Well,
was our running game that bad, or was their defense? Because they do. They have some good guys on that defensive line that they have there. And they have some linebackers that are good. So
sure, it's a combination of the two, but you're leading at halftime, right? And you score no points in the second half. And you have a pretty good last drive, and you can't run the ball to get a couple more yards for your freshman kicker. Yeah, I think some of the play calling is questionable.
And then again, we've talked as well, there's another kicker that's there that probably could have made that has quite a leg. And I don't know if maybe they sent the wrong guy out there. I don't know. I'm not sure what the situation is with that, but that was a dead duck when he kicked that ball. Was it tipped?
There
really
was a
sure.
hand on it. There was penetration on it. And so,
I didn't know if it just went up and was dead ducked, or it actually got tipped or what.
Yeah,
but I don't even think it made it 20 yards. It didn't make it even close to the goal.
It didn't go anywhere.
I mean, so I understand that guy is a redshirt freshman. It's his
I'm not
first
pinning that
kick
on the,
in an NFL.
I'm not pinning that on the kicker.
First kick in a college game, not an NFL game. I almost said that. But still, we were put in a bad situation there in the first place. I don't, and we've talked about that.
Why is the game coming down to that?
Why is the game coming down to that, and why did that series come down to that? It shouldn't have.
What does our head coach have to say about that?
I will play his press conference. This is one thing that I always do after the games during the season, and here it is right here. This is what George O'Leary had to say about what happened the other night against FIU.
Tough game. You don't block, tackle, do the things you need to do fundamentally to win games. That's usually the end result. Give FIU credit. They did things to make plays out there, and we didn't make enough plays in any phase, really. So tough loss, but you just regroup, and it's a long season. Go from there. I didn't think we'd get any movement up front at all. I think there wasn't any cutback lanes to hit, and I think we got some plays out of it, but near not enough. Too many lost yards plays in the run game, and I thought we threw the ball well enough, and probably should have went to more no huddle throughout the whole game, moving it. But when you get down to that 145, you're trying to make them bang their timeout, so they have no time left if they ever get it back. And we're on the 25-yard line, you just maintain your distance, and that kid hits field goals blindfolded from there. So, I mean, it was a deal that, you always get second guessed. You continue going 2 minutes all the way down the field, but I think it was more important because we weren't stopping them in any phase on defense either. Too many big plays was to get those timeouts out of there and kick the field goal for the win and make them utilize their timeouts and the clock. So, but again, we didn't play well enough in a lot of phases of the game to win. I thought offensively very sporadic out there. Defensively, as probably as poor a tackling demonstration as I've seen in a while, as far as too many grabbers, not enough guys moving their feet and tackling. So that's where it was. But, give them credit. They made plays when they had to make them. I think it'll be a great film to look at from a standpoint of learning. But, if there's a guy in front of you, there's not much learning curve except to block him. I think we got to work hard on fundamentals that I didn't see tonight at all. We'll get to the film tomorrow and correct the mistakes and move on from there. I thought Jordan's a really good player. I mean, I think the quarterback did a nice job of getting him the ball, again, he's a class athlete. He really is, and he does a lot of things for us. And even Trylko Smith, a lot of those kids showed up tonight, and we just didn't show up on the phase of the game that we have showed up. Defensively, I thought was sporadic at best, and the run game. You just can't throw all day like that. And again, it was not necessarily what they did; it's what we didn't do.
All right, so there you have it. The words of George O'Leary. One of the things that every time after a game, and whether it turns out good or whether it turns out bad, there's not a lot of emotion that comes out of George O'Leary in those press conferences. It's, some fans, I think, probably want to hear him be a little bit more upset or be a little bit more happy after games.
I'm looking for a little bit more accountability on the part of coaches.
Right.
And I don't hear that. I've never heard that from him.
Right.
From
a lot of coaches, not just him.
I know. But here he's talking about, it felt to me like he's defending the play calling on the last series, that this kid is kicking long field. Well, why are you putting your freshman kicker
in
his
that
first
situation?
Kick?
Right.
You didn't give him an opportunity. You didn't give him an opportunity to kick when the ball was on the 20, and you went for it on fourth down. And I know, that you're looking at 2020 there, but you're going to give him his first chance there. That's the first opportunity he's going to have to kick a long field goal in that situation. I don't think you put him in there. We're moving down the field. Holman's hitting wide receiver Akins. He's hitting guys.
Yeah.
And that's what you do? 3 botched running plays? Nah.
Well, we definitely didn't have a running game, so it wasn't at the time to run 3 times up the middle. I think that's what it was.
There's a minute
times.
plus on the clock. How about take a shot to Akins in the end zone? 6'3", 237. I think he can jump.
Yep. And he played a great
2
game.
touchdowns.
Akins played a great game. Smith played a good game. The defense, could have been a little bit tighter. I talked on Twitter during the game and said that, if the defense just tightens up a little bit and the offensive line blocks a little bit better, we'd be in a lot better place. I think that's what happened. It's an unfortunate loss, but hopefully we come back and, learn from the mistakes and move on.
Well, to break it down a little bit more, pleased that former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel will be joining us on the podcast every week to do some X's and O's with us. And Kyle has an interesting take on this first loss of the season.
Welcome to Inside the Huddle with former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel, brought to you by the Little Greek Fresh Grill. Fresh, flavorful, fabulous. Waterford Lakes, 855 North Althea Trail, Orlando.
Kyle, thanks so much for joining us. Boy, rough start for the beginning of this season, huh?
Yeah, definitely not the ideal way to start off the season. I guess if you're looking for the silver lining initially, it is the first game of the season. So a lot of football left to be played, a lot of improvement can be had, and if you're going to lose one, earlier in the season is better, obviously, than later in the season.
You played quarterback for the Knights. First up, talk about Justin Holman and the growth we've seen in him from last season to this first game.
Well, I think Justin played a great football game. I think he was 23 of 34 for 242 yards and 2 touchdowns. He showed that there was a lot of maturation, in my opinion, this offseason. There was obviously touch on the football in a couple of those passes, but I think he's coming along very well. I know Coach O'Leary was happy with him. I know many of the people in regards to the fan base were pleased with the way that he played. I know he'd probably like to have a couple of passes back there in the second half that he overthrew, but overall I think Justin is right on pace for a good season, and he's a guy that we're certainly going to have to lean on moving forward over the next 11 games.
What's it like to be the quarterback and to be hit a couple of times like the way he was and sacked? I was always the guy on the other side of the ball. I played defense in college at the University of Kansas, if you don't know that. And I was the guy every once in a while putting those hits on guys. What is it like to be back there, though, and to get hit like that? What does it do to your head?
Well, first of all, I think, it is part of the position. And you understand going into it, especially at this level, that being hit is a part of the game. Can it be frustrating? Sure, because many times you're being hit and you don't have the opportunity to deliver a hit, although I used to like to get out in front of Kevin Smith and throw some blocks if I could. That was kind of always the payback that I could get on the defense. But, I think Justin understands that it is part of the position, and sometimes it gets you fired up. I used to like getting hit early on in the football game, kind of got you into the flow of the game, knocked out some of those jitters. But it's really the ones that are coming that are most difficult. The ones where you're loose and a guy gets you from behind or somebody gets you from the blind side or you don't really see the hit, your body kind of absorbs it. When you see somebody coming at you and you're stepping into a throw and you know you're going to get hit, that's when the body tenses up, and those are usually the ones that are more painful. So as long as you don't see the guy coming, it's usually not as bad, believe it or not. But I do think that it helps you get into the game. And if you understand that it is part of the position, then you'll be much better for it. But I thought Justin, he's a physical guy. He's got great size, and he's put together really well. I saw in a recent interview that he did, he was wearing an Iron Knight T-shirt, which means he had to qualify inside the weight room to hit a couple different levels in the bench, the squat, the power clean, vertical. There's some thresholds that you have to hit to be an Iron Knight, and that's one of the most elite awards you can receive as a player. I saw that he was wearing that T-shirt. Guys really cherish being called an Iron Knight, so you know that Justin's put together pretty well.
Staying with the glass half full, certainly seems like Justin has developed some chemistry early on with Trylko Smith and Jordan Akins. Those guys came up early and often for the Knights on Thursday. Talk about what you saw from the quarterback position with those wide receivers.
Well, I think it's very obvious. Number one, you got to give credit to Coach Sean Beckton. With a young guy like Trylko Smith, getting him up to speed as a true freshman in his first game. I think that you're only going to see him get better and better this season and throughout his career. And Trylko Smith's a guy's name that we're going to hear around here for a long time. He's on pace to play 48 or 52 games for us as long as he stays healthy over the next couple of seasons. So I was very pleased with what I saw out of Trylko. Jordan Akins, obviously, he's a sophomore, but he's 23 or 24 years old, and he was a professional athlete. So you know that when it comes to preparing mentally, preparing physically, he's a guy that we're going to be able to count on. And we kind of knew that going into the season, that, okay, we know we have Jordan Akins. Who else is going to be there? Trylko Smith stepped up. I know Chris Johnson, a redshirt sophomore, had 3 catches on Thursday night as well. And that was kind of the position going into the season that everybody was saying, who's going to step up? And are we going to have playmakers there? And ultimately, that seems to be the strength of our offense and really our team at this point is the wide receiver position in the passing game. So I think Justin is happy with those guys. The chemistry between Trylko and Justin will continue to grow. Chris Johnson and Justin will continue to grow. And I think that we started off very well. 9 catches for both Jordan Akins and Trylko Smith, 104 yards each. Kind of eerie how similar those stats were, basically the same. Obviously, Jordan had the 2 touchdowns, but feel good about the wide receiver position. It's a little bit easier to play, as like Coach O'Leary likes to say. The younger you are, It's easier to play further away from the football, and that wide receiver position is definitely a position that can be played by a true freshman, and Trylko Smith is going to be a special one.
Obviously, there were some problems with the offensive line, and I think we've had this for the last couple of years around here. We were very used to having the McCray brothers and a couple other guys up there and having an incredible offensive line for the Bortles and Storm Johnson days, and even before that. What are they going to do to be able to fix that offensive line and get our running game going? Because the running game really was, they got annihilated the whole game. Where do we go from here with that?
Well, certainly up. Mostly more yards. 30 carries for 46 yards. I think we had 27 yards and negative rushing yards. That may include a sack or two as well. But it's not always, I think what people need to remember is it's not always on the offensive line. Obviously, I think the point of attack needs to be established better than it was on Thursday night. You also got to remember, I believe FIU had 9 of 11 return starters on defense. I'm not sure if that stat is absolutely correct, but it was an experienced defense for FIU. And I know they haven't had a great team in the past 2 years. They've gone 1-11, 4-8, but Ron Turner's getting those guys turned around. And so it was a formidable defense. It's not Stanford, but it wasn't a bad bottom-dweller defense either. So let's remember that as well. But, the offensive line, I think that they do need to be more aggressive. They do need to sustain some blocks. But you also got, I went back and watched the game on CBS Sports. I recorded it. And there were cutback lanes for Dontravius Wilson and Will Stanback that we just didn't hit. And a guy like Storm Johnson or a guy like Kevin Smith or a guy like Latavius Murray, they were able to see those cutback lanes. And a lot of times in Charlie Taft's offense, Tim Salem's offense, and now Brent Key's offense, you're not always going to get the look that you want at the point of attack. The running backs need to be able to see that there's a cutback lane there. And I saw maybe 4 or 5, 6 different occasions where cutback lanes were there and the running backs just weren't hitting them. So an improvement needs to be on the running backs and seeing those cutback lanes. And then I think we need to establish the line of scrimmage and really create some tenacity. I just didn't see, personally, from the naked eye, you think of UCF's offensive lines in the past, and they've been very aggressive, dirty, nasty guys that are down there fighting tooth and nail for every inch. I didn't see that tenacity with this offensive line. It's not something that is just going to happen. It is a mindset, and I would look for Coach O'Leary and Coach Key to get those guys on that page and make them understand, look, the weight room's over, we're on the field now, and you guys need to establish this tenacity. And I would expect a guy with experience like Joey Grant at center to really take a leadership role in that offensive line. And they need to take some pride in that position because we're not going to be a successful team this year if the offensive line doesn't play what we need them to.
Sitting in the stands on Thursday and seeing William Stanback mentioned as a starter and then kind of MIA for much of the first half, is it us fans that have unrealistic expectations? You mentioned Kevin Smith, Latavius Murray, Storm Johnson before him. Are our expectations too much for him, or is he letting us down in his ability to grow as a player on this team?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I have all the answers for that. I think the expectation level for him was high, obviously because of the success that he had 2 years ago as a true freshman. He obviously had the huge hit running over the cornerback from Rutgers that made national headlines, SportsCenter Top 10, and you're saying, wow, Will Stanback may be a guy that can be special for us for years to come. But he hasn't developed into that back yet. Now, I don't know if he's in the doghouse with Coach O'Leary. Some guys go in the doghouse with Coach O'Leary and never come out in their careers. I've seen it. I've witnessed it firsthand. I think that the expectation level should be high because we've had great running backs here in the past. We've been successful with running backs. But in my opinion, I think that's probably one of the areas that we have not capitalized on in recruiting over the past couple of seasons. And you look at the athleticism of some of the running backs, even the running backs at FIU the other night, talented guy, shifty, to make guys miss. We don't seem to have that guy right now, or we're at least not seeing it on game day on the field. Now, I'm not at every practice, and I don't know what the coaching staff is seeing during the week, but you would have thought, coming off a Fiesta Bowl win, with the success that we've had with running backs in the past at UCF and putting them in the NFL, that we would be able to recruit one or two big-time guys, especially after a season like that in 2013. I think he's missed out in that regard. But hopefully Dontavius Wilson, if he's healthy and Will can develop, but they got 11 games left to prove that they can be the guys, because ultimately at this point they have to be.
Before we talk about the defensive side of the ball and that disastrous last series, I think one series that gets lost in the conversation, considering how the game ended, was the opportunity UCF had at the 20, a fourth down play, that controversial replay on whether it was a first down. Take us inside to that moment. It seemed to me, with a new kicker, maybe this is an opportunity to give him a shorter kick there, and that would have put UCF up 8. And of course, they fail on that 4th and 1. Were you questioning that decision at the time?
Well, hindsight's 20/20, right? But I think we did the right thing initially. It's 4th and short. You got a big, strong quarterback in Justin Holman, like we talked about before, and he gets the first down. But the replay officials blow it dead, and at that point, in my opinion, I would have kicked the field goal. Or if I'm going to go for it, I wouldn't have run a quarterback sneak again. I wouldn't have walked right back up to the line of scrimmage and tried to sneak it after we had just successfully sneaked it prior to the timeout. So I think that if you want to go up 8 there, that changes the game. And if you want to go for it, great, the first time around. But once the play was blown dead, it was shown that it was actually 4th down, and that we didn't get it on 3rd down. I would have gone ahead and either kicked the field goal or ran a different play, maybe getting Justin on the outside or something else to give Justin a run-pass option. But I probably wouldn't have tried to sneak it again. I do question that call. However, we saw the result. Is we don't get any points out of that drive, kind of kills the momentum, and it comes back to bite us later on. But that's basically what I saw.
Were some of those things first game jitters, for the players, as far as the players are concerned?
I think so, for sure, on the defensive side of the football. I mean, the thing that I didn't see that I've never not seen in a George O'Leary coach team is just tenacity and attacking the football and getting 11 guys to the play, and so much soft coverage with the defensive backs. I mean, I don't recall ever really noticing that. Now, I don't know if that's coaching or if it's the players. I don't think it could be a little bit of jitters, but I think it's just having trust in your assignments. I think that we had our assignments down from the linebacker perspective, but we weren't attacking and running back sometimes when he was catching the ball out of the backfield, and then he was too fast. He was around the corner and he was gone. But some of it could be first-game jitters. I think I truly, honestly think that some of the players were looking beyond FIU, like we were going to walk out on the field and they were going to lay down for us. And, I don't think that was ever going to happen. So, this is a game that we can certainly learn from as far as players are concerned. Can't overlook anybody. Anybody can beat anybody on any given day, and that's why football is such a great game. You looked at a bunch of upsets yesterday. Northwestern over Stanford, who we play next week. BYU beating Nebraska, and some other. We play the game for a reason, and you got to go out there and play it with your highest ability all the time and respect every opponent. I'm not sure that everybody did on Thursday night, but some of it may be jitters. I think some of it is trusting the coaching and not overlooking opponents.
Kind of leads into my second question. What's it like to come out and play that first game after you've gone against your own guys all summer? I know you're excited to get the season going, but what's it like inside of a player's head to come out there and play that first game?
Well, I think it depends on the type of team that you have. I think that this team, there were a lot of guys that were new faces on the field. And so I don't know if there was anybody that truly took on a leadership role, and that's what you're looking for in that first game, in my opinion, is you're looking for the leaders, the experienced veteran guys on the football team to make sure that we're ready to go. I don't know if that happened. I know that Coach O'Leary wants to see more guys step up. He always says that it's the seniors got to take control. I think that needs to happen this week going into Stanford. But it's usually pretty exciting getting out there and playing against another team. I just think that there was a lot of guys in that locker room that didn't know who was going to step up and be there for the team because there's so many inexperienced players playing. And that's one of the things that we all knew going into the season. Who's going to be, we were asking as fans, Who's going to step up at wide receiver? Who's going to step up at defensive back? Who's going to step up at linebacker? Who's going to step up at running back? Who's going to step up across the offensive line? Well, those aren't just questions fans ask. Those are also things that players look around the locker room and are wondering the same type of things, because ultimately you can practice well all week, but somebody's got to make plays in the game. And now I think we really need to develop, some confidence has been developed as a wide receiver position. I think our defensive backs, although we were playing pretty soft coverage, there's some confidence was established there. And we just need some of the other positions on the team to come forward. But right now, you got a quarterback that can win ball games for you. Who else is going to step up around him?
You mentioned the defense there, and it certainly got dinged in the media and by fans. But you look at that, 131 yards rushing, 260 passing for 391. UCF did hold them to 15 points, and UCF is in a position to win that game. So let's move ahead now to this final drive. They get the penalty that takes it to the 23. There's a minute or so on the clock. I'm sitting there. I'm not happy with the game, but I kept thinking, we're going to win this game. And I said to my buddy, let's not play conservative here. Let's not settle for a field goal. He's hitting the wide receivers, great, Holman that is, and let's just be aggressive. And then that meltdown that results in that long field goal attempt that's blocked. What were you seeing there? Did it make sense to you, the play calling right down at the end?
Well, this is $1 million question, right? I don't always want to disagree with Coach O'Leary, and I usually don't. I think that he's a great coach, and he's got us to this point as far as the program. But this was his decision, and he's one that always said that he loves watching football games to look at clock management and see how coaches handle clock management. And he's been around a really, really long time, 40-something seasons. Been a lot of situations like this. I think with this team, you got to look, who's your strength? It's Justin Holman. And clearly in this game, up to that point, the strength of our offense was the passing game. We moved the ball down the field 44 yards there in a 2-minute drill situation. And to me, what Coach O'Leary basically said, in my opinion, is that he was willing to put the game on the foot of Matt Wright at a 23-yard field goal from the 23-yard line, which is a 40-yard field goal. He said a couple of times that that was an extra point. Not in my mind. I don't think in many people's minds that it's just a chip shot. Now, I'm sure Matt Wright probably makes those all the time in practice, no problem. But this isn't practice. This is the end of the ball game to win a team that we're supposed to beat. I would have probably stuck with the passing game and at least took a couple of more shots rather than just trying to pound the ball into the line of scrimmage, have FIU use their timeouts, kick a field goal, and basically have not that much time left on the clock. I would have gone ahead and said, if we can score, let's score. And let's take our chances with our defense. That's what is confusing to me, because Coach O'Leary usually has so much confidence in his defense that he'll say, we'll take our chances with our defense. I like our defense. That's my specialty, is defensive football, if I'm Coach O'Leary. To me it's saying, well, you don't trust your defense as much as you trust a redshirt freshman kicker when the game's on the line. And that was interesting to me. Hindsight's 20/20 again. I think that I would have been more aggressive there with the play calling, because it had just been what had been successful throughout the course of the night. We had momentum. We were driving down the field. Let's at least take a couple more shots and see if we can't get in the end zone and let ourselves play defense and make them beat us at that point, rather than just trying to win on a field goal that is not a chip shot at 40 yards. Obviously, the penalty hurt. It moved us back 5 more yards. Some penetration came through on the field goal attempt that led to the block. I would have just liked us to see us be more aggressive and give Justin Holman some confidence going into the rest of the season. All right, you drove us down late in the 2-minute drill, put the ball in the end zone, our defense stopped, and we got out of there with a win. Let's move on to Stanford. I would have loved for that to be the scenario. I know Justin would have felt really good about that. I'm wondering how he feels that the game is basically taken out of his hands at that point.
Well, which sets up week 2. So an 0-1 UCF at an 0-1 Stanford. Stanford upset at Northwestern. 2 statistics jump out at me. UCF with 30 carries for 46 yards. Meantime, Stanford's D gave up 225 yards to Northwestern. What's going to give? How do you see that matchup? UCF first time out to California, big prime time on Fox Sports. Highlight for UCF fans all over the country traveling out there. What do you think UCF's chances are?
Well, I don't think they're great right now, despite the the game that we saw yesterday out of Stanford. It's a scary thing when a big team like that, number 21 ranked in the country, goes on the road and loses their first game of the season. You're going to be playing a tip-off Stanford football team on Saturday night. Now, with that being said, it'll be interesting to see what Coach Key and the offense take from the game film of Northwestern against Stanford, because Northwestern ran the ball a lot of times from the shotgun, a lot of misdirection. I'm wondering if we're going to take anything from what Northwestern did and try to apply that to our game plan. Football is one of the biggest copycat sports in the world. You see something that works, you tweak it a little bit, you add it to your game plan going against that team. It happens all the time. And hopefully we can find some things that Northwestern did that were successful and incorporate those things into our game plan. It's clear that Stanford is maybe not as stout up front as many may have believed. And you also got to remember, Northwestern was playing that game with a quarterback that was starting his first ever game. So it's not like they had an experienced veteran guy under center for Northwestern that went out and beat Stanford. It was a first start for that Northwestern quarterback, and they knew that they needed to establish the run to win that football game. If we have any chance of beating Stanford, we got to hit that number that Coach always says is the magic threshold, 150 yards rushing. If we're going to beat Stanford, we will at least rush for 150 yards. If we don't get to that number, I don't know if we have any chance of beating them on the road. And then we're going to have to play better on the defensive side of the football as well, because Stanford has some athletes. They have some really good tight ends. Be interesting to see how our linebackers match up against them.
We'll talk to you about that next week. I got one more thing to ask you here. What about the Little Greek?
Little Greek is, thank you for asking, is a restaurant here in Central Florida that I'm a partner with in developing Central Florida. We are Americanized Greek Mediterranean food menus here. It's fast casual. We're basically in the Chipotle, Payway, Panera category in regards to you come in, you order, we make it fresh right there, but it comes out really quickly. And this is the first store of 18 that we're going to do here in Central Florida. Myself and my two partners are the area developers for the greater Central Florida area. We're right here in Waterford Lakes in the northwest corner of the shopping center, just down from Jeremiah. It's just around the corner from Best Buy. Everything's fresh. Everything's made to order. The price points are very positive, very good. You can check us out at littlegreekrestaurant.com. I'd love to see any Knight fans out there. I'm always in the store. I have a name tag that says my name. I actually lost 50 pounds recently, which I'm very proud of, so I may not look like what people have seen in the past couple of years. But come in, check us out, say hello to me. Love to talk about a little bit of UCF football, and I guarantee you that you won't be disappointed with the food.
We look forward to talking to you next week. We really appreciate you doing this for us. It was great information. We'll talk to you after the Stanford game.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I love doing this. Look forward to doing it every week throughout the 2015 season and beyond, and charge on.
Meantime, if you haven't seen it, Yahoo Sports out with its winners and losers from the first weekend of college football. Any guess where you think UCF ended up on that list? On the losers list, with the headline there, "What the heck, Knights?" This isn't how Coach George O'Leary's tenure as interim athletic director was supposed to start. No kidding. Yeah, we're on that losers list.
Well, with the performance like we had, we should be on that list, unfortunately. It's unfortunate that we're on that list, but it's, there's no reason not to be.
One of three teams in the American to lose week one was UCF. Duke 37, Tulane 7. That's a future opponent. Boy, they're no good. They had a viral shot of just horrible play.
SMU, I watched that game,
yeah,
and they showed some signs of brilliance a few times.
They gave up 700 and some odd yards of offense.
They did, but their offense looks pretty stout. They just got tired, obviously.
Baylor can do that to you. 56-21 Baylor.
Yeah, if you looked at Baylor compared to the SMU guys, the size difference was huge. It was a definite, showing of a Big 12 program versus, a American team or group of five. It was definitely a huge difference there.
Now, your predictions oftentimes are all over the place, but I must say, as I watched Penn State and Temple for a while, it was you who thought Temple would be a serious
Temple's
threat.
Good.
Temple
is good.
10 sacks of Penn State's quarterback, 27-10. The first time they had beaten Penn State since before Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
That dates back a while.
Somebody was saying at one point Joe Paterno was like 14 or something the last time they beat him, which is crazy if you think about that. Because
best win for the conference, and that's what the commissioners talked about. The team's head coaches and athletic directors have talked about is you got to go out and win those games against those so-called Power Five, and big, impressive win, sold-out stadium for Temple. Beating Penn State.
And there was a lot of wins versus losses. I mean,
everybody else won pretty much.
Yeah, Temple 27-10 over Penn State, UConn 20-15 over Villanova, Navy 48-10 over Colgate, Tulsa 47-44 in overtime over FAU.
Hey, they beat their Conference USA team.
They did.
Yeah.
East Carolina 28-20 over Townsend. South Florida 51-3 over FAMU.
Yeah,
FAMU must not have any defense, like at all.
Announced crowd at Tampa 30,000 on a Saturday night for their home opener, and
So
they
that
always
means-
inflate the turnstiles there.
So that means there was probably 19,000
Well,
there.
it means
and half
in a
of them-
65,000 seat stadium. And article out this weekend is that South Florida's kicking around again.
Did the
Possibility of an on-campus stadium, but it's hard to justify when they play in a state-of-the-art stadium a couple miles from
Did
campus.
FAMU's band play, I wonder?
Probably.
'Cause
That's always the best part of the
That's
FAMU.
why people came
Yeah.
to that game. And those people probably didn't stick around for long. Anyway, Memphis 63, Missouri State 7. That's a lot of points there. Missouri State, obviously, a FCS team, so whatever. Houston 52 over Tennessee Tech, 52-24, I'm sorry. And Cincinnati 52-10 over Alabama A&M. We also talked about the losses. Duke 37, Tulane 7, Baylor 56, SMU 21. Take from that what you will.
9 wins for the AAC, highlighted by Temple. 3 losses, low-lighted by the Knights.
Yeah, take for that what you will, and, we know our foes now a little bit better.
Speaking of foes, next up, Stanford.
Absolutely.
So might as well dig into that one, put this one behind us, and time to
and
go on the
we
road.
talked to their rivals guy, so basically they're Brandon
Hellwig of Stanford.
Yeah, the Brandon Hellwig of Stanford.
It will be a battle of 0-1 teams when UCF travels to Stanford, a late Saturday night start on the East Coast. Cardinal upset on the road at Northwestern in Week 1, 16-6. Joining us to talk about that game and to give us some insight on the 2015 Stanford football team, Cardinal insider Andy Drukarev, publisher of Stanford's rival site. Andy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Hey, so Andy, first question. What went wrong against Northwestern for the Cardinal?
A lot. Certainly on the offensive side of the ball, gaining 240 total yards, matching only 2 field goals. That's not what anybody close to the program, who followed the program, expected of the Cardinal after a very strong 3-game stretch to conclude last season, and by all accounts, a strong offseason. I just think Northwestern, probably a solid defense, middle of the pack in the Big Ten, maybe one of the top-tier units in that conference, but for Stanford to come away with only 6 points in their season opener, I think is really disappointing to everyone involved on the team. And on the other side of the ball, I don't think you can hang too much on the defense, holding Northwestern to 16 points despite being out on the field a lot. But, just the offense really struggled, and coming away with a loss against a team Stanford was favored by almost 2 touchdowns against, not the way the Cardinal wanted to begin the 2015 season.
We'll talk a little bit more about your quarterback. Decent stats in the first game, 20 of 35, 155 yards, the late pick. What can UCF fans expect from Kevin Hogan this weekend?
Well, when Hogan is right, like he was at the end of last year, he's a guy who can make plays with his legs, extending plays. Stanford will design a few runs for him. Relatively accurate, can make the deep throw, in command of the offense. He wasn't awful against Northwestern, but he also wasn't great. He intermailed a few throws, like you mentioned, through that interception at the end of the game. What UCF fans can expect on Saturday, I really don't know. I really don't know what to expect from Stanford's offense, because the gap between what we saw on Saturday from them and what they've shown during the offseason in the last 3 games of last season is so vast. And really the gap between the talent on that side of the ball and what they showed on Saturday is pretty significant. So, I have to think they'll be better, but it's really hard to predict how things will play out on that side of the ball against UCF, just given the massive struggles they had yesterday.
UCF's running game was absolutely anemic against FIU. Stanford, with just 85 yards rushing versus Northwestern, is that a reason for concern for the Cardinal Nation?
Oh, definitely. I mean, that might have been the most surprising part of it to me. Stanford does return 4 or 5 starters along the offensive line. They have a back in Christian McCaffrey, a sophomore who really got spoon-fed a little bit this year, a little bit last year, has a more prominent role this year. But, for whatever reason, the running game just really didn't get on track. Probably some missed assignments up front. Northwestern defensive line, frankly, got a lot more push against Stanford's offensive line than I thought they might. So that's something, that Stanford will need to remedy if they want to have success moving forward. Part of it also, when Stanford fell behind, they did go to the passing game a little bit more. But in order for Stanford to win, given the way their offense functions, they need to have a strong running game that they just do. So that will certainly be something to watch on Saturday.
Now, earlier on defense, you said only held Northwestern to 16 points. While I was watching the game, it seemed like Northwestern kept Stanford off the field a bit. Wildcats running for 225 yards. Any worry there on Stanford's run D going into week 2?
I think so. I think that a good chunk of that yardage came a bit later in the game when Stanford was maybe a bit fatigued. That's something they're going to have to deal with this year. They really have 4 defensive linemen they trust, and that's it. And one of those guys, Harrison Phillips, who is, they're essentially their nose tackle, their inside guy, got hurt. Nobody really knows. We don't know the severity. It hasn't been publicized yet of that injury. So that will be something to follow. But if he's out, you have 3 defensive linemen that they really count on, and that's not an ideal situation. And so I do think they are a little bit susceptible inside, given the question marks surrounding Phillips, and also they're very strong at one. Stanford plays a 3-4 defense, but the other one is a little bit questionable. Blake Martinez, senior's excellence. There's 2 guys rotating aside from him, which it's a bit up in the air. So I do think there are some questions in the middle of that Stanford defense. I still don't have a ton of concerns about the Cardinal defense. It's not going to be what it might have been the last few years, where it was one of the top 5 best in the nation, really. But it's still going to be an above-average unit, but certainly if Phillips is out, they could be susceptible in the ground game.
Well, going into the season, the pundits were calling the Cardinals serious contenders for the Pac-12 title. Do you share that opinion, or did you share that opinion?
I guess my feeling about this year's Stanford team was we knew the defense was going to take a step back. They lost 9 of 11 starters. It's, at that side of the ball, proven coaches, good players, but any time a unit loses 9 of 11 starters, including multiple ones to the NFL, there's no way around it. The unit is going to struggle, at least initially. I did think, and I still do think, there are some talented young players and talented emerging players on Stanford's defense, but, whereas last year they gave up maybe 16, 17 points a game, I thought this year maybe mid-20s sounded about right, but I expected there to be a significant improvement on the offensive side of the ball. Really, after watching the last 3 games of the 2014 season, Kevin Hogan completed 76% of his passes during that stretch. The first-team offense was really clicking on all cylinders throughout spring ball, throughout fall camp. I expected Stanford's team to have an above-average offense and an above-average defense, frankly. I thought that they'd play a very tough schedule, one of the 5 or so most difficult schedules in the country. But I thought this was going to be an around a 9-win team that would contend for the conference. Still way too early to write them off, but I think you might have to recalibrate a little bit, at least as far as the offensive expectations go, after Saturday, and certainly if they continue to struggle in the next few weeks.
What's the pulse of the Cardinal Nation? What are the fans saying on your rival site? I know our message board gets a little crazy after we have a loss maybe that we shouldn't have. People say they want to fire, our coach, George O'Leary. Does the same thing happen there at Stanford?
I think, the 24 hours after a loss, an unexpected loss, is going to be hectic and irrational and crazy like any college football message board. I think that's a given. And there's certainly been no shortage of frustration. And I think for Stanford fans, a few things play into it. One, last year was really frustrating for a lot of people because of the talent in the program and the perception that they really did underachieve on the offensive side of the ball for the first 10 or so games. And then I think, given the result of the last 3, given what fans saw during spring ball and fall camp, there really was a sense of optimism that things had turned the corner on the offensive side of the ball. And so for Stanford to only score 6 points, it was really kind of a devastating blow to many who were optimistic, who thought the corner had been turned. And, to have that, differential between expectation and reality, I think was frustrating. So just a lot of, basically, to sum it up, a lot of frustration about the offense. And, certainly people express their views in different ways. So probably not so rational, others a bit more constructive, but I think that's been the general sense. Just, what went wrong on the offensive side of the ball and what's going to happen moving forward.
Well, we're definitely thinking a lot of the same things here. So I need your prediction for the UCF Stanford game on Saturday.
Ooh, I haven't, dived as deeply into the UCF side of it as I would have liked at this point. So with that caveat, I do think Stanford will bounce back to a certain degree. I don't see there's any way they don't. It was a 9 a.m. start against Northwestern. Their top 2 receivers were out or limited in some capacity. One of them was suspended for a half. The other was limited due to injury. So Stanford should have a better offensive performance. How much better, I'm not sure. But home opener, I'll say at this point maybe 28 to 13 Stanford wins, but that's a very preliminary prediction without necessarily all of the information.
I understand, and we will give that to you. So we will have our predictions in our show later on as well. So, hey, thank you very much, Andy, for joining us. We appreciate it. It's always good to talk to someone with the other teams, and we really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Early odds for the UCF game at Stanford. Stanford favored by 17.5 points.
Yeah, I saw 16 earlier.
It grew.
Well, so yeah,
a couple more odds came out.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I think that's that 1.5 is for mad. They're going to be mad.
Well, yeah,
all right, prediction time.
I hate to do this, but I'm going to say that we still get hammered by them. I think it's going to be 42-21.
You're optimistic on the 21. I have 33-13. Reminds me of going to Missouri last year, where we were pumped up, thought that could be the SEC game. We knock off, and then we get throttled. When has UCF won West? Lost at Texas, lost at Missouri, lost at Arizona State. Game I saw several years ago in person in Tempe. It seems to me that unless we do what we talked about there with Kyle, where UCF runs the ball against a team that got gashed in the first week against Northwestern, if that doesn't improve, I don't see how.
Well, it might be just like last year where we went 0-2 coming out of the gate. I guess that's what you get, and it could, if we don't go up there to South Carolina, and do something.
That's
it could
a long
be a lot
way
worse
away
than
yet.
that. But still, the teams against the Power 5 and stuff like that, we have Furman in the middle of those two.
Thank goodness.
Thank God. Something to make it a little bit better, hopefully.
Let's see progress. I'm well beyond moral victories for the UCF program. Let's see progress with a young team, only 9 seniors. So let's see week-to-week improvement.
Yeah, so speaking of home openers, next year, I guess, there's one that's been added. South Carolina State, a bit of a dud for a home opener next year as well.
Yeah, but when you look at the rest of the schedule, Maryland is another non-con game at home. It comes 2 weeks after that. There'll be travel to FIU. But the big one there is going to Michigan, going to Ann Arbor. So how many tough games do you want them to play in that first month?
Yeah, well, at least we have a Power 5 team at home
Maryland,
next year.
yeah,
because, there's none this year, which is really a bummer.
So the home schedule next year with dates and all of that to be assigned includes South Carolina State, Maryland, Cincinnati, Temple, Tulane, Tulsa, and the road ones, Michigan, FIU, UConn, East Carolina, Houston, and South Florida U, which gives UCF fans an opportunity to go to both Tampa and Miami for 2 close road games.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Already looking forward to next year.
No. That's how it did kind of sound.
It kind of feels like that in a way, yeah.
Yeah, that's how it sounded.
Also, there's a bowl watch thing
That's
going
to change every single
it
week.
Is. Sports Illustrated predicts that UCF will be in Orlando's new Cure Bowl versus Arkansas State.
Get your tickets now.
Yeah, USA Today says in its bowl prediction thing, UCF versus Marshall in the Miami Beach Bowl.
Marshall with a big win Sunday over Purdue, a Big Ten team.
Yeah, I think it would be kind of cool to be in that Cure Bowl if we had to be, because it'd be right here in our own backyard. Man, imagine playing in the Citrus Bowl again, with it being nice and pretty in there now.
What, you don't want to go to St. Petersburg?
No.
You don't want to play Tropicana?
Never again. Never again. I don't.
By the way, the Miami game is in the Marlin Stadium, so you're in a baseball stadium there too.
Not for playing football in baseball stadiums. At least that one, it's a nice stadium. It's new. This dump in Tampa, that place.
St. Pete.
My God, it's horrible. The place is horrible.
Speaking of Tampa, though the Rays play in St. Pete,
Whatever.
really thought Rennell Hall was going to make the Buccaneers. Right? He had made the roster. On one day of this weekend, on Saturday.
After the 53-man roster drop thing, he was on there. He was listed. Oh, man, what a bummer. I hate that move.
It seemed like he played well enough to earn a spot on the team.
And
that he
hopefully
good.
somebody will pick him off of waivers. There is a chance, for him to be picked off of waivers there. Also, Terrence Plummer but off the 53-man roster there for Washington.
And he was the highlight, by the way, making the practice squad.
Right, yeah.
Everybody else got cut.
Yeah. He makes
besides
the
13
squad.
guys make the NFL rosters, the Bortles, the Brandon Marshalls. Those guys, of course, we know. But these bubble guys, all of them.
Right. Rennell Hall, I bet he'll wind up on that practice squad as well. Jags cut Storm Johnson. The Panthers cut Jordan McRae. Titans cut the other McRae, Justin McRae.
Not a good weekend for the McRaes.
No. Patriots cut Chris Martin. Eagles cut Josh Reese and Justin Tukes.
That got lost, by the way. Those cuts kind of got lost when Tim Tebow got cut.
Yeah, well, I really didn't even want to mention his name on this, honestly.
Is that
I cannot
banned
stand
on the
that
podcast?
guy. I cannot stand that guy. Anyway, one of the shockers, though, Ravens, Ja Reed. That's
didn't
crazy.
see that one coming.
Yeah, that's crazy. Something's got to be going on there. I'm assuming that he will go someplace. Hopefully somebody can claim him or something. I don't know if he's eligible for waivers or not, but and then, Jacoby Glenn. How about that being cut by the Bears?
That gamble didn't pay off very well for him, did it?
Absolutely not. That was one of the worst decisions ever made by a Knight going to the NFL before they should have.
And remember, we talked about that we thought, well, all right, he'll hook on somewhere. He'll make a final roster somewhere.
Yeah, it didn't even get drafted, signed as a free agent, and then...
We should be talking about him suiting up against Stanford on Saturday is what we should be talking
Absolutely,
about.
and it would have been a lot better. Also, the Lions cut Torian Wilson.
NFL, week 1, coming up.
Yeah, I'm ready for it to get going.
13 guys going to get some playing time.
Wish there were more Knights there.
But some prominent ones. Blake.
Absolutely.
Latavius Murray.
Yeah,
Brandon Marshall.
Blake has looked a lot better in this preseason. We'll see what happens with him. Murray, it's his year. It is absolutely his year there in Oakland.
When do they play the Chiefs?
I don't know.
Okay,
but
sorry.
Yeah, I'm sure that's usually a national television game, so I will get to see that one. And I will somehow throw in a couple of roots for Murray in that game, just because I'm such a diehard Chiefs fan. It will be hard, but...
And the two Ravens, even though Ja Reed got cut, two Ravens, former Knights, Kamar Aiken and Brashad
and
Perriman.
We'll see about Perryman because he's been hurt the whole time, so we will see there. All right, now I think it's time for some news and notes, huh? And now, news and notes from the world of UCF sports. Highlighted by 4 opponents that made the NCAA tournament last season, a total of 11 games against teams that qualified for the NIT or NCAA championships a year ago, UCF men's basketball head coach Donnie Jones announced the Knights' 2015-2016 schedule. First up, the Knights open at Davidson on November 14th. Meantime, Coach Jones announced the hiring of Ricardo Greer as the Knights' new Director of Player Development.
15 home games highlight the 2015-16 UCF women's basketball schedule announced by UCF head coach Joy Williams. First up for the women, they take to the road to face Nebraska-Omaha, also November 14.
UCF women's soccer beat Oklahoma State 2-1 on Sunday. That followed by a midweek 2-2 double overtime draw with Ole Miss. Some accolades this week. Senior Ashley Spivey, offensive. Sophomore Saga Fredrickson, defensive. And Jessica Taylor, rookie All-Earned Player of the Week honors from the American. Next up on the road Thursday at Florida State.
Following men's soccer's 5-0 shutout of Florida Atlantic to open the season, sophomores, I got the hard names, by the way, in case you were wondering, Mateus Pasalo and Nico Regent, and freshman Gorka Apperbay were named the American Offensive Player, Defensive Player, and Rookie of the Week, respectively. Bad weather forced a scrub of Wednesday's game at Florida Gulf Coast. Up next, Wednesday on the road at North Florida in Jacksonville.
You did not provide me with that pronunciation guide, by the way.
I will make a mental note of that task for this
UCF
week.
Cross Country's first meet of the year in Tampa, canceled by bad weather. Next up, the Knights are home Saturday for the UCF Invitational.
That could give us an opportunity to check them out.
True.
At home this weekend. The Volleyball Knights go undefeated over the weekend in Nebraska en route to being Omaha Classic champs. Junior Kia Bright named the Omaha Classic MVP. Freshman Jordan Pingle and senior Abby Fleener made the all-tourney team. Up next for volleyball, tournament in Minneapolis next weekend.
Finally, the UCF women's rowing team recently took time to help those who have risked their lives for our country. The UCF student-athletes spent 5 hours at Moss Park teaching wounded veterans that have injuries varying from head trauma to lost limbs to paralysis how to row through Learn to Row for the Wounded Warrior Project, put on by South Orlando Rowing Association. That's freaking cool.
Yeah, that was really impressive. I loved reading about that this week, and it's a even better story, longer story on UCFathletics.com. So check that out. Way to go for them.
I think that's awesome that they did that. This has been episode number 50. It's been a big one. It's been a long one. Thank you for hanging in there if you're still there. We will see you next week. I'm Andrew Phegley.
I'm Trace Trylko. Go Knights!
Charge on.
UCF, charge on to the field. With our spirits, we'll never yield. Black and gold, charge right through the line. Victory is our cry. B-S-E-T-O-R-Y. Tonight our nights will shine. UCF, Knights. UCF.